Hey, Inspired Tribe. How's it going? Welcome to another Inspired Conversation. My name is Jean Nolan, and today we're not just starting a new Inspired Conversation, we're starting a new series. You might have heard me say this before, but one of our great intentions for Kristin and I is to help reintroduce, educate, bring to the forefront the Indian country culture, the original culture of this continent, of actually both continents, and bringing the cultures together and help bringing them together to a harmonious state. And so today we're welcoming a very special guest to the Inspired channel, Yona from the Cherokee Nation. Thank you so much for being here today.
It's a pleasure to be here. I begin by saying OCO, like the letters OCO. That's our greeting in Cherokee. Basically means goodness in you. I think an equivalent with another language would maybe be like namaste, basically acknowledging your spirit and energy. And so with that greeting in Cherokee, I just want to take this opportunity to begin with to give thanks to Unetlanahi, the provider. That's the word we use for Yahweh or Yehovah or God, I guess. I'm always grateful, never resentful, and always take every opportunity I can to give thanks, to share this love and share this message and share the culture of our Cherokee ways. My ancestry is with the Eastern Cherokee Band and the Paine Clan, but we also have the Western Cherokee and the Katua Band and many other Cherokees spread out throughout the world. And as an introduction to Katua, or the old ways, as prayers we call it, I'd like to begin by introducing everyone to the basics of, Cherokee concept of meditation as pertains to your senses, because you can see me and you can hear me and you can go outside and smell spring flowers, and you can walk barefoot upon the ground and feel the electricity of the earth coursing through your body, the energy of things when you touch it with your bare skin, hugging. Often we shake hands like this, wrist to wrist, so we can feel wrist to wrist, blood against blood, heartbeat against heartbeat. It's about the intimate connections that we have and the role that we play within the great mystery in all things living, because again, it's about, with your human senses, how you perceive things. And so with that, in the introduction of OCO, try to imagine yourself. You don't have to close your eyes, but you can if you want. You just try to imagine yourself in a forest in the morning, and apparently there's a farm nearby because there are roosters crowing, and the sun begins to come up and it begins to turn the sky so many colors. And so now within the forest, at least you know where east is, because the sun is rising. You're gaining an awareness of which way is up, which way is down. Now that you see the sun rising, you know which way is the east. You can begin your morning prayer of cleaning out the gunk in your heart, your soul, and your mind. The morning prayer, Wende Yaho, Wende Yaho, Wende Ya, Wende Ya, ho, 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 hey ya, ho, ya, ya, ya. And the whole thing is awareness to find out, first of all, where are you standing? Where is the east? The sun rising has shown you where it is standing, where it's east. So now you know east, west, north, south. And now when you hear things in the forest, you know which way where it is relative to you. Is it at 9 o'clock? Is it at 3 o'clock? Awareness. Also, you can hear the eagles and the hawks screaming overhead up above. If there are large herds of deer or buffalo, stomping a trace nearby, you can literally feel the ground rumbling through your feet and see the leaves shaking on the trees as the buffalo are shoulder to shoulder, maybe 20, 30 wide and a half mile long, just beating down a dirt scar through the wilderness, which we call a buffalo trace. That's actually how many of the roads that we travel today were built. Like, for example, the Jackson Highway from Louisville to Nashville, US Route 31E, which I grew up on in New Haven, Kentucky. So anyhow, I've covered 6 directions now: east, west, north, south, above, and below. But there are 7 directions. And the most important direction is the 7th direction, which is Ahni, or the direction inside. And when you go inside, we would call it in English soul searching, meditation, prayer. There are many words, but hopefully you understand the concept I'm getting at here. And it's that soul searching when you try to get in contact with your own intuition, when you try to get closer to God or great mystery, when you connect to your higher power, when you basically vibrate from the soul. And the other 6 directions are the external directions from which you'll hear, smell, see, taste, remember, and internalize whatever advertisement, whatever compliment, whatever insult, whatever exciting, uplifting news you've seen, whatever depressing, intimidating news you've seen. These all get internalized through these different directions into our being. And to the point that some people will internalize so much of what they hear, and they'll do it themselves. I'll give an example. I keep raising children. Lord's blessed me with children. And if there's a kung fu movie on that the kids are watching, a kung fu movie, as soon as the kung fu movie's off, there's probably going to be crying, because they're going to be picking up their little broomstick pony or whatever toy and practicing nunchucks and everything else, because they've seen that it's influenced them. They've studied what they were doing, and now they're trying out their judy chops and karate moves against each other. And so, I see that today, in particular with the focus on profilicity and how prolific one's profile is within the social media silo. But long story short, those are the 7 directions. So the focus of renewal of your heart, recharging of your soul, and refreshing of your mind. This is something that begins every time that we go to congregate together as Aniwodi, as Cherokee. There's not that many ceremonial stomp grounds left, but when you go to the ceremonial grounds for renewing and recharging and refreshing, you have to stop at the poles before you enter the ground. And at that point, you're supposed to put out of your mind all of these fears, doubts, and insecurities. It's explained very well by John Trudell with the American Indian Movement. He's given many speeches. But you want to put these things out of your mind. If you have grudges or hatred or offense, whatever is ailing your mind or your heart or your soul, you just make the most conscious effort to put that out of your mind and to just try to take your mind somewhere else. Like I said, imagine yourself in the forest at sunrise, and you hear the roosters crowing and you can hear the animals moving around, and it's the feeling of awareness and being able to experience nature with your own senses. And unfortunately, that's become a daily meditation exercise for me, because most of us now largely live in hermetically sealed environments with climatization, whether you're in your vehicle with air conditioning and heating buttons by the steering wheel under the dashboard, or whether you're under a roof behind glass windows, walls with thermostats. You can adjust the temperature. And even to the point of, you may love nature and everything, but most of your nature interaction is through the eyes of David Attenborough, for example, a great movie maker from BBC, made loads of nature videos for those that aren't aware. Because I realize I am so old, Gene, that I've gotten to the point that I'll reference people and be like, well, who is that?
I like to reference Bob Ross on occasion, because he was, I don't know if you remember, famous TV painter. Yeah.
I like at work, I was talking to a kid about had he ever heard of the Rolling Stones? He had never heard of the Rolling Stones. And I said, well, have you ever heard of Mick Jagger? Surely. He's like, no, I don't think so. I was like, well, have you ever heard that song, Moves Like Jagger? Oh, yeah, it's Maroon 5, I believe. I'm like, I'm so old. I'm like, well, that song that he's singing is actually about Mick Jagger and Rolling Stones.
Indeed, who actually moves in a way that's worth writing a song about.
Yes, he had those moves like Jagger, that chicken walk and pursing the lips and all that stuff. I just feel so grateful today to be able to spread this message to everyone, that each and every one of you are powerful. Realize that these messages of powerlessness and helplessness that Madison Avenue and other advertisers will bombard us with, maybe other people in relationships will tell us that, I guess that's where something like the serenity prayer would come in, where you do have to disambiguate when things are not going as hoped or as wanted, as you desire. You have to disambiguate, and what can you change and what's beyond your control. And God grant me the serenity, wisdom to know the difference. But beyond that, I'm so thankful that people are at last realizing intrinsic value. That your time with your family, your time with your brothers and sisters, your time with your parents, with your children, your time with your other family members on four legs, we call them fur babies. These moments of love and happiness and intimacy and bonding are worth more than all the money and treasure in the world. And we live in such an intensely capitalist, commoditized world that, it's like the intrinsic value has just been memory held. And so that leads to a certain extent, after so much time passes, to the emptiness of the rat race. What's the point in it? Why am I doing this? I feel so inspired to do greater things. And I feel so inspired by God's love, by the great mystery. Yet everything just kind of feels blah. And it's the intrinsic value when you begin to realize with your soul and appreciate you are powerful.
I think
you have the ability to heal yourself. You know what I'm saying?
I think you said something and explained it in introducing this great perspective that is much greater than most people see every day, by pointing to the most important direction, which is the seventh direction. And what is beautiful about this message is it's intercultural, it's interreligious, it's international. It applies to every human being, and it applies to every spiritual teaching and every religion anyways, because even in religions that solely view their God as an externalized being, even there, it's usually taught that you give God a place within you. But that begins by going within and going into this direction. And all the strength and all the beautiful moments can only be realized when we go into the seventh direction. And you've given people a beautiful direction on a very simple practice on how to do this, and everyone can do this. And even if you don't have access to the forest because you're in the city, you can still close your eyes and put yourself in that forest. You can still do these things. Are there other practices that you use to be more within the seventh direction, within yourself?
Yes.
To balance yourself? What are other things that you do to do that?
Well, of course, for me, gathering of medicines is, whether I go to gather blackberries or sang root, ginseng, panax ginseng, or other medicines. The process of going and gathering medicines and taking the tobacco and rubbing the tobacco and leaving it whenever I dig, as a sign of respect, because you're always acknowledging Unetlanahi, the provider, which most common word in Cherokee for God, as it were, is Unetlanahi, the great provider, because God has provided all of this grace and all of these gifts. And if we'll help ourselves, He'll help us. And so all the medicine, everything you need is there. And the directions, the instructions on how to live are there. But the instructions are given not to the two-legged, but to everything else that lives. And that's why the deeper meditation we'll pick up on next time is intonation of your own personal vibration and harmonizing with the endless vibration in all things. Our language, we would say, Nigatsi Manela. In Lakota, they would say, Mitakuye Oyashin. But you're referring to, we're all related. Maybe in the Christian tradition, it would be, we're all God's children. All of us. All of us are God's
But not
creation.
just humans, not just the two-legged.
Yes. All of God's
everything that is.
And so when you reach that next level of vibration, you're never, ever alone again. And for me, it's kind of like what they would call the rebirth process, or being born again, like from a Protestant perspective, where they would say you've been washed by the blood of the cross, and the lamb was shed for you, and for all that, so that your sins can be forgiven. I mean, I myself went to St. Heinrich Seminary my freshman year of college in Spencer County, Indiana, which is a Catholic seminary. And so I've always been fascinated by other religions and theologies, and how they deal with this, and how to heal people. And so, I parted ways with Catholicism because I agreed with Martin Luther and believed in personal relationships with the Creator, and that I don't need an intermediary. But that was just my own personal experience, that when I want to pray to God, I'm going to pray directly. I'm not going to call the operator in the Vatican City and see if the Pope can patch me through real quick if he's not too busy. I mean, it's, I don't think that there should be anyone between you and your ability to connect to all living things. And for example, one of the saints in the Catholic tradition is named San Francisco de Assisi, or in English, Saint Francis of Assisi. He actually was born into a wealthy family, but he ripped all his clothes off and climbed up on the mountain and literally went totally Cherokee Aniwodi and gave sermons to the birds. He preached to creatures because he saw that he was related to all things, and that God's love and God's energy is in all things, whether it's shale formations or coal deposits or trees that's marketable timber or deer that can be harvested for buckskin, or buffalo that can be harvested for hide. You know, the last thing I'll leave you with on this first round is, you know, if you go back into that forest now, and now you're seeing the sun set to the west, imagine you spent all day long studying your surroundings, and you saw that the biggest oak tree with the mistletoe clinging to its branches, with the hollow hole in the bottom where the squirrels and chipmunks are storing their acorns, with the red-tailed hawk's nest in the top of the tree. I mean, you've been able to appreciate this tree as an entire living community, seeing that serrated leaf edge, kind of like a sassafras, or for people that don't know leaves and dendrology, looks like the shape of the state of Michigan, okay? But it's a jagged edge, that's ginseng. And, you know, you're seeing all of this medicine, all of these different species living in harmony, in concert with each other, all around, within, below, and above this oak tree. You wake up the next morning and there's orange spray paint across that tree. And they paint on the tree because they measured the diameter at breast height. And we're like, well, this is veneer white oak. It's worth $1.65 at the sawmill. Calculated about 2,400 square feet. So this tree's worth so many megabucks. And cue the still. Here comes the Husqvarnas. And so from the capitalist perspective, they can put a finite value on the actual marketable timber that can be sawed out of that veneer white oak tree. But is anyone calculating the loss of the ginseng medicine, the loss of the mistletoe medicine, the loss of that community of squirrels and chipmunks that were eating ticks and other parasites that are just going to be even more proliferate through that part of the forest? You know, people complain about ticks and everything everywhere, but when you kill all the other animals that eat the ticks, you end up with ticks everywhere. I mean, there are feedback loops and there are consequences and ripple effects to just cutting down that one tree. And so that's where I leave you with, you know, to realize that everything you see is animated and has soul and spirit and vibrates with God's love. That's why when you get into the wilderness, what we would call Indian country, what others in the country would call God's country, by God, and you get into that unspoiled wilderness, then you know, like Bo Cephas, Hank Williams Jr. would tell, the country boy can survive. You can run a trot line. You can live off of the bounty of nature and be empowered by nature rather than to be intimidated by nature. And by all means, you know, if there's tsunamis crashing on the shore of Japan, if there are other natural disasters happening, like the terrible quad state tornado that just ripped across, came up through, what was it, Blytheville, Arkansas, and Tiptonville, Tennessee, and then up through Mayfield, Kentucky, and all the way up, went right through my hometown, did all this damage. You know, yes, nature can be intimidating and scary, but nature to me is empowering, because we are all interlocking systems of life in a cycle of life and death. Whereas in the current civilization, as it were, that we're living in, it's really an aggressive empire. It's a very, very aggressive empire that's primarily focused on mining and natural resource exploitation. And it's been that way from the beginning. I mean, Columbus was in search of gold. He didn't arrive to evangelize like St. Paul to the Ephesians and the Corinthians. He came to plunder, and no better than Jack Sparrow and Pirates of the Caribbean. And so cue Coronado and Cortez and Pizarro and the rest of them. And that gets us to where we are today, where, you know, for example, Elon Musk jokes on Twitter about, we coup who we want to coup. I really love your lithium up there in the Andes Mountains, and we might just take it because we need it for the batteries for my, you know, self-driving vehicles. We need that lithium. And so, you know, this mentality that's been internalized continues to this day with oligarchs watching their capitalist kung fu movies and then going out and practicing their kung fu moves like the 3-year-olds downstairs in the playroom. So with that, remember how powerful you are. And if nobody else has told you, Yona loves you, every cell of your being. And just know how powerful and how much of an impact you are making on other people's lives, because they already sense your spirit, your love, your care and compassion. And that's the Lord working through all of us to really make this a better place. So stay inspired, and Jean, you always inspire me. Many blessings.
Many blessings to you, my friend, and I second everything you said. As you can see, Inspired Tribe, and that's one of the things that I noticed during our first conversation with Yona a few weeks ago. We were on the phone for about 2 hours, and Yona painted this big picture, but he began, just like today, with the 7th direction, from within, where when we find this space within, we can understand ourselves better, but we can also comprehend the interconnectedness of everything. And this can only happen from within. So the 7th direction is really what we both and all of us want to leave you with today, to explore this over the coming days consciously. And we will come back. Yona, Kristin and I, we have agreed to do this as best as we can bi-weekly on a serious basis. And one of the things that I look forward to is when Yona shares with you how intertwined the cultures already are, and we're not even aware of it. How many things we say on a daily basis, we use on a daily basis, that come from the indigenous ways, from the original ways. So that's going to be one of the next things that we learn from Yona. Yona, thank you so much for your wisdom.
It's always an honor and a pleasure to share this message of love and inspiration and healing and renewal with everyone. I tell you, you are powerful, you are special, and the people around you already know it. So if you weren't aware, I just want to make you aware of how much of an impact each and every one of you have already made and are already making in people's lives. And I love you all.
I love you too, Inspired Tribe. Yona, thank you again. Inspired Tribe, thank you for being here. We'll see you again very soon, right here on the Inspired channel. Until then, be blessed, be in love, and explore the 7th direction.